Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of Unruly by Nature with myself, Rachel Not. That is my name. And Kim of Radar Canine and Sue of Heart Connection Dogs. I was just saying to the ladies before we went live, I always get this real a rush of excitement and nerves, but mostly excitement in the pit of my stomach when we do this, because we never know what's going to unfold. But actually, today, I feel like I'm going to start with a little story and it just landed before we jumped on the call. So to give it context, I'm having a new website built, a brand new website, which I have been wanting to create for a long time now. But the timing has just landed. It's perfect. And I've got this gorgeous lady called Melissa from Well Current who is creating this new website. And we jumped on a call today, and she's wanting to get my ideas about color and copy and yada, yada, yada. So for the last week, I've been really playing with color and the feeling of color. And I've been on my laptop playing with all of these apps and looking at different websites, and then noticing in my dreams what colors came through. So I've been really in that exploratory place of trying to work out what colors feel good for me and to create that space for what I want to bring people into. And then I was out in the garden yesterday. It's always nature. I was out in the garden yesterday, just potzing around, doing things, moving things from left to right, moving the house a few inches to the left. And I was taking one of my plants out of a pot, and I went into the garage where I've got about 500 pots, empty pots, plastic pots, and pulled this one out. And I was like, oh, I really love the color of that. Really, really love the color of it. So I brought it out into my garden. And then I noticed my fennel plants were being slightly overtaken by these nasturtiums. So I thought, well, I'm just going to move one nasturtium anyway. A whole load of them came out in my hand just to create space for the fennel. And then I remembered someone saying to me, oh, you can eat nasturtiums. They go really well in a salad. So I put one in my hand, and I'm carrying the pot at the same time. And then I put them together, and I was like, wow, that really works. That feels really good. So anyway, I had that, and I kind of uploaded the photo onto my computer, had the chat with my website lady today, who got my cogs whirring and got me feeling into where I'm going with my message in animal communication. And then it landed just before I jumped on the call with you guys that when we moved to this house a year ago, a week, we've been here a year and a week, we brought with us the ashes of both of our dogs. So my Weimaraner Baxter and Bex's little Boston Terrier Cosmo. And I'm not normally someone that takes the ashes of my dogs, but I did for Baxter for whatever reason. So I brought them here. And because it's a new property, there wasn't anything planted already. And I thought, well, where am I going to put him? Where I want him near me, but where am I going to put him? So we put him in this one part of the ground. And I thought, I'll just stick a blackberry bush or something that creates fruits over the top of it. Anyway, we ended up moving the blackberry bush. So there was just this soil. A few months later, all of these nasturtiums burst out of the soil. And they're not a plant I'm that familiar with. So we were just like, wow, that's really cool that they're the plants that have specifically come up where we planted the boys. So went on to Google, ChatGPT, to see what nasturtiums represent. And what really blew my mind was how they're about rebirth. So the color orange represents I've written this down because I won't remember all of it, but I'd be intrigued to see what lands for you. It's about creativity, inner strength, courage to express authentically, and that love doesn't end, it just changes form. And I was like, gosh, I knew I was wanting to get it. It kind of blew my mind on so many levels that I'd forgotten that that's where we'd buried the boys. Of course, obviously that's in my memory, but that seeking of that color and the message came through in so many different ways, but it's almost like come back full circle to that the connection never ends. It's always there, even when they are in spirit. There is always information and messages coming through. And that's where I ended up in animal communication, was through dogs in spirit. That's how it started to come to me. But it really felt so profoundly beautiful for me that I wasn't just working at a surface level, that there was this, I'm being guided and I'm feeling what is true for me in that moment. And there's a timing to everything. And it's all just imperfectly perfect. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that.
So good. So good.
And I feel like that's what the little gurgly thing in my tummy is that, when you land on something that just feels really true to you and it just, yeah, is deep. So my question, do I have a question? Or I guess, is there something, I don't know. Where do we take it next? Is there something about that story that resonates? Or do I just
There's always
want?
something that
Yeah.
resonates. And I'm going to grab one of those threads and what came to me on that. So, as you were saying that, and as we were talking about beforehand, it's blowing my mind more and more the more I start to listen with all of my senses to everything around me. The guidance that we are constantly be given and shared is always there, and we just never, you know, we we've lost connection with it. I don't know. I think we've just lost touch with it. But I've been exploring this a little bit in my group that I'm running, and one of the ladies um, wrote a little post and said she's been so excited by some of the synchronicities that have occurred to her during the week. And she started to write about them. And then at the end, she said, but I don't want to give meaning where there is none. And I just thought that stood out for me because that's what we kind of been trained. Like, it's who says there's meaning in that? It might have meaning for you. Maybe you're just making it up. And this is where we have lost touch with exactly this kind of intuition, this kind of wisdom, this kind of intelligence that's surrounding us all the time. Because at some point in our lives, we were told that's rubbish. It's probably just a coincidence, and don't put meaning where there is none.
Mm.
And I feel that it's so sad. When I read that, it was like what you've just written there, exactly like you did now, Rachel. I got butterflies in my tummy reading the wonderful insights that she'd gained and the synchronicities that she'd experienced, but then ended it off saying, I don't really want to give meaning where there is none.
Mm.
Yeah. So I'm just adding that in because I think that's pretty sad. That's the majority of us, let's face it, I mean, myself included, up until a little while ago. But it's all just woo. It's all just, we're making it up, and it's all just stories, and we're trying to find meaning where there isn't any. It's just all wrong. Is it wrong, or is it just, I don't know, a new perspective?
Man, that's powerful. And I just got a physical response from you telling that story, honestly. And what came to me is it's not so much about that something has no meaning, but I think we feel like we have to know what everything means. Everything is purposeful in this life. Everything, even the smallest gesture or word it holds great ripples that go out to the universe. But we're so stuck on having to know, why did this happen? Like, or what's it for? What's it mean for my life? What's it's like, it's just it's funny that we talk about perspectives here. And this is just a perspective shift to be grateful for all of it, and we don't need to know what it means. And I mean, I'm a work in progress. I especially when you talk about timing. I mean, I'm writing a novel, and I never, ever, ever in a million years dreamed what it was gonna take to create something that was ready to be presented to the world. You could do it very fast. There's a million courses out there. Write a book in 30 days, write a book in 90 days, use AI for whatever. But I'm getting something that's greater than myself coming down into this novel. And even this morning, I'm in the shower and like the whole first section, I want to change it again. And it's not something of where I'm being a perfectionist. It's this insight that I'm getting that is like so profound. It just needs to like shift the story in a way. And sometimes I feel so stuck, and I kind of got told off by a tree on a walk last week. I I was feeling sorry for myself. I just want to finish this. I want to get moving on the next section. I don't know what to do. And I walked by this tree in our yard, and we call it the guardian. And much like Rachel, you said the plants grew where you put your boys. This is where our girl is.
Ah.
And I walked by the tree, and I'm like, guardian, I'm like, help me out here, man. I'm like, I'm just stuck. I don't know why. And he goes, do you think because I stand here in the same spot every single day that I'm doing nothing? And I'm like, no, your roots are doing this, your branches are doing this, your leaves do this, you're helping and he goes, so what if you're just a tree for a while?
Mhm.
And it really hit me that sometimes there's so much purpose in just being and in the silence and in what we would consider doing nothing. And I'm like, where have we, in society created that busyness is,
Productivity.
thank
Mm,
you.
mm.
Yeah. I mean, so wild.
Yeah. I definitely I love that story about the tree. And I do think I am a turtle at times, which for me is quite slow, but I recognize that there is still unconsciously a pressure to achieve. And who made that up? Where's that come from? But we have got our own, like we're coming into the autumn now, it's raining. You say you've got snow, Kim. I'm sure it's probably quite chilly in Austria where you are.
Mm.
And I definitely feel that now I'm indoors more because it's raining. I'm not a massive fan of walking my dog in the rain, and she definitely doesn't really like walking in the rain. I feel now it's the perfect time for me to be in that writing creative space. So there is that natural rhythm in nature. And when we try and go against it because of some forced agenda that we don't necessarily resonate with, that's when things start to jar a bit in our bodies. And I think we do this with our dogs as well. We're so agenda focused. That's the shoulds and the oughts. But yeah, we have our own natural rhythm that changes literally daily. I mean, if I have a day where I'm doing absolutely nothing, as you say, we're never doing nothing. I know now that's perfect because there's other stuff I know that I'm either my body's needing rest or other thing. Like have you ever had, this is what's popped in my head. Have you ever had it where you've gone to another country, like completely you've gone somewhere you don't know anybody, and then you bump into your old next door neighbor from 30 years ago at the corner shop in this random country? Like, not that specific story, but how bonkers. And I've had lots of those experiences where I've been away and then I've bumped even a lady on a course on a dog behavior course. It turns out we lived next door to each other 20 years ago on the same road in London. And it's like, how mad and that we have now landed together at this point. And it's just when you kind of do a bird's eye view and look back at everything from a higher perspective, you can see everything moving in that beautiful symbiotic. But when we're in it from our tiny little, I'm like under my hat, you know, looking at everything through like a tiny, tiny telescope, we don't, it just puts a pressure on ourselves. If we think we're in isolation and we're working in isolation in a vacuum, then that feels quite, I understand why people would feel lost and stuck and confused and disconnected. And the what's the word? The antidote to that is to really recognize that we are all connected and we are all helping each other, which sounds so simple when I put it that way. But I think that story with Baxter this morning for me, and even though I have so many stories like that, even when they come, they make me feel so at home, like on earth. They make me feel really peaceful and really love. Like I just feel that. And it's not necessarily about Baxter or about the plant. It's about feeling connected for me, feeling that I'm important, but I'm not important. You know, I'm kind of part of this web of interconnectivity and I'm playing my role perfectly, whether I sit at home and watch Netflix and have cheese and popcorn, or whether I'm stood on a platform talking about how we need to change our perspective, the way we live with dogs. You know, whatever it is, that's where you want to are meant to be in that moment, or think. From my Rachel perspective at the moment.
Yeah, isn't that funny how we always want to be somewhere else? We want to be, either on another path or further along or not there yet or all of those things. When in fact, as you say, that the age-old saying, you are exactly where you need to be, is very, very difficult for us humans to be okay with, to embrace. Because again, I think it's got a lot to do with all the conditioning of, you got to be further along. You should know better. Well, I've studied this, so I should be able to do that, and X, Y, Z, and so it goes on. And I was thinking about in terms of our dogs the other day. We've all got dogs at different ages and stages. And I remember, Rachel, when you had Baxter, and he was already an old boy. And my Charlie was then what? Maybe it was about 5 years ago. I think we've known each other. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe a
And
little bit
5 years
longer.
ago, Charlie was still a nutter, total nutcase. And I remember chatting with you one day, and you were like, "Oh, well, it's fine, it's all right." And I'm like, "You have no freaking idea, woman, what it's like to live with this dog. And you've got an old bloody fart dog who does nothing wrong."
It's role reversal now.
And now the roles are reversed. And I go for these lovely long strolls in the woods, and we sniff out things, and we have lovely time. And Charlie's off lead, and he can hardly hear, and he can hardly see. So it doesn't matter what comes past. And you've got your young nutter now. And I just think, again, how things change and how things evolve. And this is just the way, which is life just comes in sort of phases, doesn't it? And you go through this phase and that phase, and it's the same as us growing up as humans, right? We're always just in different phases of our life. And every phase has its wisdom, and every phase has its challenges. But when we learn to just not be wanting to be finished with one phase so that we can get to the next, would be such an awesome thing if we could all get there. And I think this, again, for our dogs, we give them very little credit for when they're going through adolescence, for instance, right? We spoke about it the other day, Rachel, in our thread when you were talking about the wild things you did as a teenager, right? And we laughed wildly about it. Well, that's still as
We won't go
teens
into
as far
that.
as I'm concerned. Again, we say by the time our dog is 2 or 3 years old, they should be adult now. Why? Who gives it that label? Some of us are crazy until we're 30. Why not? Why shouldn't our dogs be any different? So, saying just because they reached a certain age now they should be socially mature or mentally mature or emotionally mature is bollocks, as Rachel would say. Because we're all different, but give them grace for those wild times, when they are delinquent and they are trying to push every button and trying to just expand their, everything, trying to learn about the world through experimentation, which we all did at some stage. So I don't know how this has got to this, but that's where we are now.
Well, I can say that I'm a well-seasoned adult at this point, and I still think farts are funny and will laugh every single time. So there's that. There's that. If you want me to start laughing, just rip. But I'm gonna go back to the connection piece a little bit. And Rachel, you live in the UK. I live in the US. We're not anywhere near each other. And what essential oil did you initially pick up today? It was ply.
Ply. And I didn't
And
consciously pick it. I just opened my box and did a Kim, closed my eyes, and was drawn to that. And yeah.
And a couple of days ago, I woke up with my back screaming at me pretty loud. And the only thing that has helped bring relief to it thus far is ply. So I find that connection like incredible, that because that is not a random event as much as we would like to sometimes convince ourselves that it is. And I
And
also don't.
Kim, I chose ginger today, which is the same family as ply.
Yeah.
One is
Yeah.
warming and the one is cooling, but they have very much the same constituents.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's like, it's uncanny to me, like those connections and how easily it is to overlook them because we're not used to looking for them. And, you know, I I guess it's like a perfect time to bring out this story because you're talking about old dogs and young wild dogs, and we have one of each. So we have a 12-and-a-half-year-old Aussie, and we have a 5-year-old Australian Shepherd. And the older one has had seizures, and he's had a lifetime of them for reasons that really are not important. We don't need to know. Again, it's about the knowing why, right? But he had a neurological event probably almost 2 weeks ago now, and my husband called from work, and Django was at the office with him because he loves the treats and the attention and all of the things, and he never calls, and I pick up the phone, and he's like, "Our buddy had something happen, he can't stand up." And I mean, the tears just started rushing, and we didn't like all the scenarios ran through my mind. We need to call the vet. We need to go to the ER. We need to, we should. And then I said, wait, just freaking breathe. And I said, bring him home because we can then decide as a family what's next. And I think that Jim and I both, if you asked me in that moment, I thought it was the end. And I wouldn't have said it because he's been acting like such a puppy, and like, despite everything, he's just been really great. And so we come home, and I watch my husband walk around the corner, and I just hear this noise in the background. Just this most bizarre scuffling, scruffling noise. And around the corner stumbles Django, and he would take a step and fall and take a step and fall. And he's got this big freaking smile on his face, but it's crooked because he's like, I don't know if it was a stroke, but his face isn't working right. But he's like, he comes over and he puts his head right between my arm, and he just nuzzles into me, and he just wanted love. And we three sat on the floor, and we had left Zori in the car. And I'm like, let's go outside. Let's get him on the ground, on the earth, and let's just sit in the air for 5 minutes and just breathe. before. Let's not make and a year ago I would have panicked and we would have been at the ER and I would have been on the phone to my vet and I would have been calling everybody that I knew that could potentially help. We're outside and like 5 minutes in, he's like, "I want to take a walk." And we're like, "You can't really walk, but sure, why not?" So he walks and falls and walks and falls and walks. And we have 10 acres of property, so we have a lot of space. And he gets out to like this wild section of our yard and he's eating grass, like sweet grass. And I'm like, "Man, that's so wild. Like what, like what's going on?" And then he fell down and a rabbit went running out of the wild and he's like, "Whoa." And his nose starts working and he couldn't see. So, like, there was someone in our yard and he's barking in one direction, but the guy was in the other direction. So he can't see right, but that nose is working. And I'm telling you, it was like the more he had his feet in the ground and the more we allowed him to be himself, he started walking without falling down and he was just stumbling and leaning to the right. And like, we just stayed outside. We came in and he went to sleep and we took him back outside. And by the end of the day, he was ready for dinner. He still was listing off to the right and like his eyes were doing things. And we took him to the vet the next day and I mean, they literally saw nothing going on. He has some repercussions like in his back legs, whatever, but he was wandering around in our yard so happy in the strawberry patch falling down, in the tomatoes falling down. Like he just showed me what living in the moment is like. I'm the one worried about his posture. I'm the one worried about his eyes, and he's just living his best day in the best way he could in that moment. And it was such a profound wow moment for me that I really he was so connected to the earth and I felt it, but his presence was calm. And I knew that we were doing exactly what we were meant to be doing. And there's a lot of people that would tell me that we're nuts and we don't care.
Hmm.
And it's all noise, right? I mean, the judgments that are going to come from not running to the vet and getting all the tests. And Sue, you talked about it, I think last time was like the impact that we have. I mean, at some point, what's the impact of knowing something? And for us, it's just been beautiful. He's doing well. And the irony of it is that there's a clothing company called Intelligent Threads, and it's like a quantum clothes company that like supposedly helps with athletic recovery, and they make a dog collar. So I'm like, "Oh." I ordered the dog collar for him and it came like a week later, and I put it on him and Zori is now deferring to him instead of like biting on him all the time.
Wow.
She's like backing up and like it's like he's the king now and she went back to princess and she's been the queen for a while and he's just in less pain and I think it's helping his recovery and more power to it. So it's wild. We don't know anything. That's all I know. We just don't know anything.
That's such an awesome story. Such a beautiful story, profound, and so many, yeah, beautiful points in there about the earth and about allowing and about presence and about letting it be and just watching our dogs as they handle each moment as it comes, right? Charlie also went through a stage of having seizures, and it was also the panic was ours. We were the ones that were panicked. The dog is incredible the way they come out of it, and sometimes he was completely dazed and he would be growling and barking because his eyesight hadn't come back in yet, you know. And interesting, like you said, I remember reading this about the seizures. What the first sense that comes back is the sense of smell when they've had any kind of seizure or any kind of whatever. So isn't it fascinating that you said, that's the first thing that he deferred to was his sense of smell, because that was his way of orientating himself in the moment. And I remember with Charlie as well, he was standing down the passage and he was growling at me. And I was trying to say, "It's me, Charlie," but he couldn't hear. And then I just slid I had a t-shirt or something, then I slid the t-shirt towards him and he sniffed it and then he looked up and wagged his tail. So he had recognized me he couldn't obviously see me or hear me properly, but he had recognized me through scent. So Yeah, it's just fascinating. There's so much we don't know, right? That we don't know. And I'm going to pull that in as well because I actually have some notes here that I'd written about why we ask why. And this has got obviously nothing to do with our conversation, but it's something that I've been asking myself. Why do we need to know? Why do we need to understand? And what I'd come up with is that for me personally, is that I want to understand something because I really want to know how to work it out, how to figure out how to come up with the answers. Right? We need to know why so that we can figure out the strategy. So it's like, tell me why, and I'll figure out what I need to do in order to change it or fix it or make it different. So it's, that is the underlying why or the underlying understanding. Now, I'm not saying that there's a lot of curious understanding, as in, I'm curious, I'd like to understand why that is. But for a lot of the time, especially for me, I can see the why and the understanding comes in that I need the, the underlying core principle behind that is that I want to know how to fix it. I want to know how to change it. So it's just fascinating how that, if we take away the why, which our dogs don't, they don't know the why, right? Our dogs don't know the why, they don't ask the why. And if we were more connected to our intuition and connected to our bodies and connected to our trust in life, would we need to know why so much?
The why question comes up, and you'll probably get it too. And I think we talked about it a bit this week in our chats. The why question comes up in animal communication sessions. So I have some people come to me and they just want to understand their dog or learn about their dog, but there may be a driver for why do they dig in the garden. And there's a difference between why do they dig in the garden? I'm curious about that too. Oh, why are they digging in the garden? You can feel the difference, and I understand why, because they're, for the person, they may be upset that the plants are getting trashed. So the reason they're asking why is because they're upset that their plants are getting trashed. So they can, if they know why their dog is doing it, then they can redirect them to something else. And I really find if I go in with that energy question to a dog, I'll get like white noise because the dogs can feel the blame and they can just feel that like restriction, as in it's like if you were to talk to your partner and I don't know, maybe they drink a beer in the evening, you're like, why do you drink beer? I wish you didn't drink. They would feel that they get defensive, and it's that sort of energy, isn't it? So I learned, and I remember when I did my training with Joanne Yo, she gave us a different way of asking the question, which totally makes sense. And it's simply asking, share with me how you feel when you're exploring the garden. How does it feel to use your feet? How are you feeling? But not just specifically about the garden. It could be about lots of different areas. And that then gives us more information about the dog. It gives us more information about the garden, gives us more information about us, about plant medicine, about the microbiome in the soil or in our guts. And it gives us so much, like an encyclopedia of wisdom, and brings through things that we didn't imagine were possible. Because the why question is just, I find, is so narrow. So we have to look, what's the motivation, like you say, beneath the why. And when it comes to learning about nature and ourselves and our emotions, and there's that word healing and transformation, the why question kind of shuts things down because we're thinking something's gone wrong and we want to fix it, as opposed to we want to understand and learn,
Get
explore and
curious and
evolve and
explore.
adapt.
And I think that's a really really important point about the intention behind the question. Because if
Yeah.
you're asking why because you want something to stop, but if you're actually curiously wanting to
mm.
learn about how something works, what's behind the dog's motivation. I had the dog come to me where the person was angry that the dog was digging up the plants. And I thought it
How
was like
funny.
a hilarious question. Well, the dog was hilarious. And as it turned out, the person was planting lilies, and there were rabbits that lived in the garden, and lilies are toxic to rabbits. And so the dog's like, "Get this out of here, get this out of here." So I suggested planting something that wasn't toxic to rabbits, and she left it alone.
Amazing.
So it was like, but she was also skeptical and didn't believe that, like, the dog would know the difference. And I'm like, but, like, if they don't look in a book and go, "Oh, geez,
She's planting
lilies
lilies.
lilies are toxic to rabbits." It's an energetic thing where the rabbit wanted to be there but was not well, and the dog, like, feels the energy of the environment. It's a completely different way of being. And so, if we talk to someone about nutrition because we're curious as to chemistry and food, it's completely different than I want to go on keto to lose weight because my body's
Mm,
doing something wrong.
mm,
So it's like the whole intention behind it. And I thank you, Rachel, because Sue, it's like so important about the why question, because I think all three of us get that with clients constantly.
mm, mm.
But it's not that the why question is wrong. It's that the intention behind it
Behind it,
is
yeah.
to force change in something,
Mm.
Yeah.
And
usually to stop a behavior, I guess.
yeah, it's usually, yeah, exactly. It's usually just how can I stop this because it's causing me some kind of discomfort, whatever that is, right? And yet there's so much more information that's in that whole energetic behavior cycle that's happening between the dog and the person and all sorts of other things that are going on there.
Mm.
But I started a new book today. It's a she's a German author, and I've only listened to the first introductory chapter, but I heard her interviewed on the radio on Sunday, and I really was intrigued, and I decided to get her book. And she's a doctor. She's a what do you call it? Cell biologist, I think she is. She's written a couple of books specifically on the gut, but she's now written one on the whole body and all the different organs and how they relate to different emotional aspects. And she's not writing it from an energetic point of view, for instance, like Louise Hay. This
Mm,
is real scientific sort of studies that she's actually and her own personal experience of working with many, many, many patients, what she's starting to realize about the different organs, etc. But the thing that I'd read, which is I just find fascinating and tying into what you're saying, is that she said one of the biggest misconceptions is that our immune system is a fighting system because that's how they're portrayed. When we learn about the immune system, we learn that they come in and they fight the baddies. They come in and they fight viruses and they get rid of them and that's what their job is. And they come in on full force and that's why there's fever and, they make the big stories about why we feel ill because of these baddies, viruses that are in there. And here comes our heroic uh, immune system. And she said it's so much more nuanced and so much more complex than that. She said,
mm,
they are curious. Think about them as curious about your well being at all times, not about um, is this virus good or bad? Because she said they will, but she said they call in other cells to come and, is this maybe not such a great virus, but has it got a purpose here? Perhaps we can just leave it alone. And why do we need to, this one we do? But she said that it's like your immune cells are active all the time of curiosity. They're like knocking on all parts of the body all the time saying, what's going on here? How's this person doing over there? They're getting to know you. And she said your immune system gets to know you on a personal level as you mature. I mean, think about how credible this is. It
mm.
starts off as an immature system that gets to know you and all parts of your body all the time. And as you age, and by the time that's why she said a young child might have an immune system that is not as mature as an adult, because the immune system is still learning. It's still learning about you and your personal, everything about you, from your emotional thoughts to what you put in your body to where you live to all of those things. It's learning about you. And it's just, yeah. She said, I just thought they were so different. It's like such a different perspective when we're looking at these cells are just so curious, and they're just wanting to keep you safe and finding the best way to do it. But she said they just don't go in there and say, virus attack. She said it's not like that at all. She said, in fact, they actually more times than not will stand back and let it happen, because they can see that there needs to be a balance and some kind of, resilience built up and all sorts of things. So illness, she said, is not a bad thing. It's not.
Mm-mm.
I love that imagery now. I am never going to look at my body the same ever
I
again.
know. So I can't
Like,
wait to read the rest of this book, because already I'm like, I love this body. You're freaking amazing.
it is
Incredible.
has got insane intelligence, hasn't it? Remind us of what's the name of the author? Can you remember?
She's a German. She writes in German, but this book that I'm currently reading is her newest book. Her name is Julia Enners.
Mm.
Julia with a Gui. Julia. Enders. Sorry, not Enners. Enders. Enders. She's got one of her books on the gut health is in English. I think she's translated, but the one I'm listening to now is in German. But yeah, I'll share more insights once I get there. But it sounds, it's fascinating stuff.
I love that. I love the energy of it's not a battle and it's not trying to trip us up. Like our body. I had biodynamic craniosacral therapy on Saturday, which is new to me. Not new, I've heard of it. One of my colleagues, Dilara Pataudi, is a equine craniosacral therapist. That's a lot to say in one, but it's, beautiful words. But I didn't really know what it was, but I was drawn to it for my body. And I felt like I didn't want anything that was manipulative. Does that make sense? So I didn't want anything that was going to be done to my body. I felt I wanted to find someone that was just going to create a space where I could listen to my body's intelligence, and then they would create that space for that. And I'll just talk about the process of finding this lady, because I live in an area where there are lots of different therapists in Brighton in East Sussex, and it's it's known for people being very open-minded and alternative. It's that kind of space. So there are so many therapists everywhere. But I found this one lady, and it was interesting. I was drawn to the space that she was doing her therapies in. So it was the environment that drew me in. So there's that pull, not knowing why or what, but it was just, I'm drawn to that. But when I was there, I realized when she sat me down, and I'd never met this lady before, her name is Anita, and I had realized that I haven't been to someone like her since I left Oxford just 6 years ago, and how good it felt to be listened to, and how good it felt to be with this person that I didn't know, but that I knew we were kind of speaking the same language. We were coming from the same way of seeing the world. And there was no pressure, there was no rush. And I felt so loved, like she was just there for me. And I hadn't realized, because the work we do, whatever work you do, you are giving of yourself. I love my work, and I love like sharing and teaching and holding space and all of those things. And I've got a beautiful family and relationship. So I feel very loved and nurtured around me. But just to have someone I didn't know just hold that space for me, it was really profound. And whether it was the therapy or the environment or her, I don't know what, but I really got what it feels like when we create that space for an animal when we're because she was like she didn't go into the what's wrong with she didn't say what's wrong with your body. We talked a little bit about what's been going on physically. She just said, what do you want to get out of this session? And I just said, I want to know me better. I want to know parts of myself that I'm not aware of. And then she asked me what makes you feel safe. And water came to me. I pictured myself in water because I love like scuba diving and just being in water. Nice water, not horrible water. And then I just lay on this bed and she just held different parts of my body. And it was I don't think I felt anything like that in a long time running through my body. There was so much happening. But I realized, even though I feel I've done a lot of self-work, self-awareness, a lot of energy work, how important it is to also seek that for yourself and have that, we're so focused on, particularly as women, and that's not a bad thing. That just is, or the feminine innate in us to want to help and support and nurture. And we do that for those around us. But, we've got to do that for ourselves. And our bodies are often really, well, they are. They're always talking to us. They're always giving us feedback. That is their language, is pain and symptoms. So when I was just held by this person with no agenda, no like you're broke, no one saying you're broken, it needs fixing or giving me a label, just this purity. It was everything. It literally was everything. And I feel that's that's what our animals create for us. Like when we're going through stuff, like I know when I've had times, when a relationship broke up and you're literally on the floor, like you feel like your world has collapsed. And your dogs or, whatever animal it is, they just hold space because they're not thinking you're malfunctioning. They're just there, being love, being present. Yeah, they may come over and lick your face or whatever it is, or they may play bow, or they may just sit silently and observe you. But that's why it feels so good to be around our animals, is because they're not trying to frickin' fix us. They're just present, knowing we're going through our stuff and holding space and love. And I just feel when we can get to that place as humans and do that for ourselves, then that's when the really good stuff starts to happen.
That's wow. That's that really struck me, that last part, because it's exactly what I wrote down. That our dogs show up for us in ways that we don't notice. And I think lots of other people in our life show up in ways that we don't notice. And that might be somebody we haven't talked to for a very long time suddenly reaches out. And I've kind of had weird timing in my life where our next door neighbors had a son with cancer. And I hadn't seen them for months. They were going back and forth to Houston for treatments or whatever. And one day I just wanted to take them like some cookies or something. And I rang the doorbell and it's like I hear all this scuffling, and apparently their son had, like, his heart had seized. But when I rang the doorbell, it brought him back. And then he kind of rallied for many months, and it was wild. And then there was another time it was an old next door neighbor, and I'm like, I don't know what it is with next door neighbors, but it's true. And I'm like, I haven't talked to Vanetta in for years. And I reached out on the phone and she just started crying when I called. We were so close when we lived next door to one another. And then life, you know, kids and things, and you don't talk when you move away. And her best friend had just died the day before in a basketball accident where they had fallen and hit their head, and the concussion was obviously severe, and they had passed on, and she's like, "I can't believe you called me right now." And so I mean, it's taught me that anytime somebody pops in my head, like, I'm gonna connect, and I think we're holding space for people whether we realize it or not, is my point.
Mm,
And I
mm,
think that's the story, and I think our dogs are doing it
Mm.
for us, and it's an again, it comes to a perspective and an awareness that sometimes our dogs might leave the room
mm,
because we just need
Mm.
to be alone.
mm,
Yeah.
And just last Friday, we had a friend over, and she's struggling with her mom needing to go to a nursing home. And the facility called from the rehab center, and she was supposed to move, and she was supposed to move, and she was supposed to move. And she got very stressed on this call, and Zori just immediately ran over and started engaging with her with, like, give me a belly rub, like, and just, it was awesome to watch it. And then, you know, it was early, and Jim was headed to work and taking Zori with, and she just came over and gave Zori the biggest hug. And it was a profound moment to me to watch how sensitive this dog is, because I know
Mm.
she does it with me, but I live with her. And now here's this person who sees a couple times, and she's
mm,
got that awareness, and she just held her in that way that you're saying this practitioner did for you. And it's so important.
mm.
And it goes back to that connection piece from the beginning.
Yeah.
Mm.
And what came to me there, Kim, it's so beautiful because I just had a picture of Zori doing that. And how many times do dogs do that? They run up to somebody and jump all over them, or suddenly, lie down and need a belly rub or something like that. They don't, it's that they don't have the inhibitions because we've forgotten how to do that. We feel embarrassed about just running up to somebody and giving them a hug. Or, it goes against all of our society conditioning that we can just reach out to somebody, let me kiss you, come here, let me jump all over you because I'm so excited to see you. We don't do that, and yet our dogs get whatever blamed for it sometimes, or they get told we have to train it out of them because we don't like it. But it's just pure emotional expression in that moment, and generally it's just what the person needs, right? Even
Mhm.
if they think they don't sometimes.
Yeah. Even if they think they don't need knocking off that bike.
It's true, though.
It's
They
true. You
Right?
did.
never know.
They
If
did.
it happens, they did.
And one story that I absolutely love with Charlie now is that I used to, he's a very bouncy dog, just put it that way, and he loves to play and engage with people. Um, and so often we've stopped him from doing that because he is one that will go and cut off a cyclist. He just thinks it's fun. I mean, I've watched him do it. He'll just go and cut them off. They'll come tearing down the down the path, and he'll like pretend he's sniffing, and then just as they arrive, he goes, "Chung," and he cuts them off right in front. So it's been really difficult. We've had to be very careful about his interactions when there's other people. He has to go on the lead and blah, blah, blah. These days, I don't really do it much, to be honest. Obviously, if there are cyclists and I know it could be dangerous, I do ask my dogs to move over or whatever. But he's got this new thing now is that when he sees people sitting on a bench, he goes and finds anything that he can put in his mouth and he takes it to them. And he just drops it at their feet like, play with me. So it could be a pine cone, it could be a stick, it could be a stone, it could be anything he finds. He just rushes up to people on a bench and he engages them in play. And my husband's often said, call them away. They probably don't like dogs and blah, blah, blah. But I've just been letting it happen because I've been observing
Hmm.
how often people respond and how they respond to a strange dog coming up to them, presenting them with something, and very clear body language play with me. And even if you don't know anything about dogs, Charlie makes it so clear and so obvious. He'll put it literally at your feet or he'll put it on the bench next to you so that you cannot miss it. And then he backs up a few steps and he gives you that collie stare, like throw it, throw it, throw it. And people just, the way they light up is just incredible to watch. There's somebody just sitting on there on a bench. At first, there could be a little bit of wariness as he approaches, and then they're curious to see what he's doing. And then they see that he drops this little, whatever it is, his treasure in front of them, does a little backup thing. And then you just see the smile appear on the person's face, like, oh, you want to play. And then they pick this up and throw it a couple of times. And then obviously I have to interfere because you won't leave the person alone. You'll just continue to play the game until the cows come home or he falls over. But it's what I'm saying here is just it's fascinating to see how he engages with people. And this is his gift. This is one of his gifts. I'm convinced that he, can bring joy to somebody who perhaps is having a bad day or sitting alone on a bench. Maybe they are just enjoying the sunshine, but a lot of the time I've seen a mood shift in the people that he approaches with his simple little game. And it is something that so many dogs do naturally, don't they? Engage in play. And he's doing it to complete strangers. He has complete trust and faith in his own abilities to communicate what he wants and that he can, bring about. And yes, there have been one or two incidences where the people have sort of turned themselves and looked at their phone and just ignored him or whatever. And then he just moves on,
He's
But
not
that's just,
offended.
no, he's
No.
not offended. He just goes and finds the next bench and the next lot of people to entertain. But I think, again, so it's just coming back to that. They know energetically incredibly well how to shift people's moods, how to hold space for them, how to do all of these things. And we don't give them the credit. And we certainly half the time don't allow them to engage in these behaviors. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Because normally it's like, well, there's strangers sitting on the bench. We don't know if they're our dogs. So what do? Keep your dog away from them. Put him on a lead, And yes, it's the polite thing to do, but it's the natural thing to do. And are we missing magical moments by just allowing our dogs to do what they do best, whatever their gift is and whatever
I'm going to share a story that's slightly opposite to that one, but it's the same energy. So my bestie is an Australian, and she grew up on a farm in Australia. So she grew up with like rescuing wallabies and bats, and she's a real strong earth woman, and she's raised these 3 gorgeous children that are all different ages, but they're very wild. Like, she nurtures them to be like authentically themselves, but they're very wild physically and creatively. And anyway, Darcy's just not around kids. It's just not, we don't have kids around us locally, and I don't have friends with children, so she just hasn't spent time with children apart from our old neighbor. She spent a little bit of time with her, but briefly when she was very, very young. And Jodie came around here a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, well, I'm going to pop Darcy in the bedroom because I know the kids are going to come in with energy, and it's a really small house. So I popped her in there, but of course Jodie, being the dog person, was like, oh, I want to go meet Darcy. So anyway, it went from Darcy being on her own in there to there being like us 2 plus Jodie and her 3 children in this small space, right? So Jodie sat on the bed, and Darcy's being all a bit like coy and, a little bit unsure, because we're all a bit like, oh, we're unsure. We don't know how Darcy's going to respond to this. And the girls are really calm, and Darcy's like giving them licks. And then the little lad, and I said to Huxley, if you can just stay out there, the little lad, I said, can you just stay out there? Because there's a lot of people in one tiny space. Anyway, he busts through the door. He comes in. He's like, I'm coming in. And Jodie's like, just sit down quietly, calmly, and let Darcy have a sniff. Anyway, of course, he didn't want to do that. He decided to leap onto the pillow behind, which is where Darcy sleeps. Anyway, he just, playfully being himself. And then Darcy jumped on his back legs and basically pinned his back legs down. Like, just like, where they just kind of go, woof, like bark, don't do that. And then got off him, and he got off, and he walked out, and he was cool as a cucumber. He's grown up with dogs all over the place. He's just really confident and comfortable, not scared of dogs. And Jodie was like, I've been wanting to do that all day to him. but if it had been
Oh.
somebody else, they may have been absolutely mortified. Absolutely mortified. What is this dog doing? But, I know Darcy has that in her nature. She has got this real, like her mother line that when we got her from the breeder, she was like, she's a very strong character and she was quick to correct things if
Mm.
they don't go how she thinks they should. But wow, it happened so quickly. But it was just, I guess for me, it was really lovely because I was with someone that just gets dogs and gets, there's no
Mm.
fear there.
Mm.
There's no fear. The dog's not done anything wrong. She's just picked up on the fact that this kid was being a bit unruly.
Naturally.
So that's what
Naturally
Layla does.
unruly.
That's what naturally unruly. That's what Layla does now. So she's the total opposite to Charlie. She's more a grounded, grounded, well-rounded dog. But she's picked up when I um, call Charlie out if he's getting overexcited or doing something crazy, whatever. I call him out and I say, Charlie, that's enough, or something like that. Layla then goes in and she grabs him by the harness and she brings him back to me. By the harness. And she
Fascinating, isn't it?
grounds him a lot. She grounds him a lot, but she does it by humping. So she'll get on him and she'll start humping. And which I've, over the years again, I was like, oh God, why is she doing this? And she's being dominant and she's being this, that. It's not. She's literally trying to just ground his energy because it's too much
Yeah,
for her in the moment.
yeah,
And it's just, again, fascinating when you look at it from a different, I just leave it now. The only
yeah,
times I actually will really stop her is because sometimes I can see, he's got a weak back end now. He's not young anymore.
yeah,
And she's quite a heavy dog. So I might ask her to just get off. But I don't reprimand her. I don't stop her anymore. It's just her way of grounding his energy. And he doesn't do anything about it. He doesn't turn around and fight back or do anything. He then calms down. So it's obviously serving a purpose for him too, right?
mm-hmm.
So yeah, again, just looking at behavior in such a different lens and a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, as you say, just let dogs be dogs without the fear. Um, yeah.
I think it's brilliant. I mean, the humping behaviors and all of that. Yeah, I mean, Zori and Django are like prime examples, and I think it's really almost we're so on edge as humans just with life.
Mm,
I think life
mm,
brings us lots of lifey things, and everybody has their own trials and tribulations and stressors and right, but it's all about that productivity equals achievement. And
mm,
I start to think about the tree, or I watch our dogs, and like they do ground each other. And when you start to really observe that behavior at a deeper level, it's very profound how even things shift within your household when you stop trying to prevent something because you don't like it
mm,
or don't understand it. And like we're told, like, uh, dog humping again, it's alpha, it's dominant, I mean, who said?
Yeah,
mm,
I think the whole beauty of this life is that you think something and you create a belief system around something, and then you grow enough to change it with confidence that you just say, I don't believe this anymore.
mm, mm,
And I almost think that we make it seem wrong to do that because we talk about consistency and all of these things. And that, like, nature's not consistent. I mean, it is and it isn't, right? I mean, people will see a hurricane as destroying something, but really it's cleaning.
It's a
It's
cycle, yeah.
and it's sort of what you said at the beginning. It's like you clean one thing out to open up space to bring more in. And I think flexibility is the word that's coming into my mind right now.
And curiosity, like we said,
Mhm.
flexibility, curiosity, just going in there, ask the question, ask yourself, what's the intention behind my
Mm.
questions? What's the intention behind why I want this? And, what's the impact, as we spoke about last time? So it's really just about asking different questions, coming from a different place, or understanding where your intention is going with it,
Mm.
and very often just letting things be.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it at the beginning too, that, fevers actually serve a purpose and it's actually healing, yet for some reason we don't like to feel them,
Mm,
you
mm.
know? And I think that, like, if you go into that listening to your body space, you're probably gonna get some, you just listen. I don't know, don't have to get anything out of it. I
I was
think that
saying you don't even have to have the answers.
Mhm.
You just have to
There's no
hold
answer.
space,
Mm.
like
Yeah,
Rachel says. Just learn to hold space for
yeah.
ourselves,
Mm.
and just let the body work out what it needs to work out.
And I mean, I think we've all probably seen that with our dogs. Some days
Mm.
they sleep a
Mm,
little more, and some days they're a little more playful, and they're just going through those flow states,
mm,
and they just are happy to.
Mm.
mm.
Some days when we feel like resting and they feel like being obnoxiously playing with toys all day might not be in sync, but,
Yeah, and that's also to recognize that sometimes we aren't in sync, right?
Right,
Sometimes where they're at and where we're at in that cycle of whatever it is not the same, and that's also okay, to be okay
exactly.
with that.
What oils have you got?
I've got my ginger.
Mm.
I got
What have you
ply.
got, Kim? Oh, so you've actually got those with you.
Mhm.
We got a great blend then. I've got rosemary.
Oh,
Mm. Makes your nostrils pop.
uh-oh.
Oh, I think we just lost Rachel.
We lost Rachel. She got, like, sucked in by the rosemary.
She took a whiff of that rosemary and went straight into the
Poof.
bottle.
I guess that's
Like a
our
genie. I think
I
the genie went back into the bottle.
I think that's our cue, isn't it?
Oh, the oils always throw us one at the end.
They do. They do. Oh
It's
my
been
gosh.
awesome. I think we'll wrap it up right there, Kim.
I think we're just gonna say goodbye until next time. We'll see you later.
Take care.